There's this very specific, um, deeply existential dread that just washes over you when you have to share data with a stakeholder.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that sinking feeling right before you attach a spreadsheet named, something like final V7 really final .xlsx
Hmm.
to an email. You're just sitting there staring at the send button, knowing full well it's probably going to lock up their machine the second they try to run a pivot table.
Yeah, or they accidentally delete a crucial formula and suddenly the entire regional sales report is just a wall of error codes.
Exactly. Yeah. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. I'm Alex Martinez, a systems architect, and I've spent, well, way over 10 years wrestling with legacy BI tools like Alteryx and Tableau.
And I'm Sarah Chen. I'm an educator and a data privacy advocate. And that dread you're describing, it is so universal in the data world. I mean, if it isn't the spreadsheet crashing their laptop, it's the absolute absurdity of navigating enterprise IT procurement.
Oh, don't even get me started on IT procurement.
Right. You find yourself trying to get an executive the literal keys to a SQL Server room, waiting 3 weeks for a security ticket to clear, just so they can look at a simple pie chart of last quarter's numbers.
It's the dark ages of data distribution. And frankly, we've all just accepted it as like the cost of doing business. But today, we're going on a mission to explore a massive shift in how we distribute intelligence. We are unpacking Datok's Standalone Report Container. So that's a file that uses the datok.report extension and its companion, the free interactive viewer page, at datok.eu/viewer.html.
And this is a critical discussion for you if you're tired of all the friction that comes with sharing your analytical work securely. We're looking at a system that enables zero cost, 100% serverless, and totally secure distribution of interactive dashboards, pivot grids, charts. I mean, it entirely bypasses the traditional bottlenecks of the data industry.
Yeah, to really grasp the magnitude of what Datok is doing here, we kind of need to talk about the legacy BI trap. For years, if you built a brilliant, highly functional dashboard in something like Tableau Server or, Power BI service, sharing it was never just a matter of handing it over.
No.
You were instantly locked into this incredibly heavy server-based paradigm.
Right. The traditional model is entirely centralized. Legacy tools require dedicated hosting servers, which, means infrastructure costs. They require paid viewer licenses for every single stakeholder who needs to even glance at the data.
Procurement headaches.
Massive procurement headaches. But from a data privacy and advocacy standpoint, which is, my world, the biggest issue is that they force you to upload your proprietary sensitive information to remote cloud storage. You're pushing your company's crown jewels onto a third-party multi-tenant server.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You're opening up a massive attack surface just to share a visual with your boss.
It's exhausting. Think about the friction of, forcing someone to buy a ridiculously expensive annual membership to an exclusive country club just so they could eat a sandwich you made for them.
That is a great way to put it.
It just doesn't make sense. But Datok is introducing a total architectural pivot here. Instead of forcing your stakeholders to authenticate into your expensive walled garden server, Datok allows you to securely deliver a fully equipped private food truck right to their driveway.
I'd actually take that metaphor a step further, honestly. It's not just dropping off a food truck, it's like emailing someone a flat-pack IKEA kitchen that instantly self-assembles the moment they open the file.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, because the kitchen has the ingredients, the stove, the utensils, and the recipes all baked into one package. They aren't connecting back to a central restaurant kitchen somewhere else. The entire processing facility is running right there on their own hardware.
Okay. But as a systems architect, my brain immediately flashes a few warning signs here.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had to put on my hardware realism hat for a second and push back. Because if there's no remote server hosting the data and there's no cloud database answering the SQL queries, how on earth is a non-technical stakeholder querying a massive data set?
Right.
I mean, you can't honestly expect the marketing department to install database client software, configure local SQL environments, and set up environment variables on their dusty corporate laptops just to view a report.
No, of course not. They don't install a single thing. And that's the underlying magic of this architecture. The technology making this possible is client-side SQLite WebAssembly.
WASM.
Exactly, WASM for short. So when your stakeholder opens the viewer page in their standard web browser and drops the file in, the data is parsed, mounted, and queried entirely within their browser's local memory.
Let's break down WebAssembly for a second because it's an absolute game changer for edge computing. We're not talking about sluggish JavaScript trying to emulate a database.
Not at all.
WASM is a binary instruction format. It allows the browser to run high-performance, compiled C or C++ code at near-native speeds. So the actual Scarlet database engine itself is running directly inside the browser tab.
That's the key. When the stakeholder clicks a filter on the dashboard, the SQL query is executed against the local memory on their physical machine. No database bytes, no dashboard states, no queries are ever transmitted over the internet to a cloud server.
Which fundamentally changes the threat model for anyone working in a highly regulated industry.
Oh, it changes the entire compliance landscape. Think about a healthcare analyst needing to share patient outcome data or a financial analyst distributing a report with unmasked transaction records.
Right.
Because the data never leaves the local machine of the person viewing it, the architecture guarantees absolute data confidentiality by default. It perfectly aligns with strict GDPR in Europe or HIPAA compliance guidelines in the US.
You completely sidestep the legal nightmare of cross-border data transfers.
Exactly, because there is no transfer. The intelligence stays on the device.
Keeping the data out of the cloud is a massive win for privacy. But look, we have to be brutally honest with you about the physics of running a compiled database inside a web browser.
Yeah, the hardware constraints.
Exactly. Since this is a 100% local execution model, the speed of querying, filtering, and rendering those visualizations is bottlenecked entirely by your stakeholders' computer hardware, specifically their local RAM and their CPU threads.
That's the fundamental trade-off of edge computing. You lose the infinite scalability of a massive AWS or Azure cluster, but you gain zero latency privacy and zero cost.
And browsers are strict.
Very. Modern web browsers create a secure sandbox for web pages, and that sandbox has hard memory boundaries. Depending on the operating system and the specific browser, you're usually limited to between, say, 1.5 and 4 gigabytes of JavaScript heap memory.
Right, so there's no magical cloud server to swoop in and save an ancient, underpowered laptop. If you send a stakeholder a massive data set with 20 million rows and they try to load it on a machine with barely any available RAM, their browser tab's going to crash.
It'll just throw an out-of-memory exception.
Yeah. Now, it's sandboxed, so no data on their physical hard drive will be corrupted, but the tab itself will just die. So as the creator, you have to engineer your data responsibly.
Yes, you do.
You need to use the filter or sample size tools in your data prep pipelines to aggregate or downsample the data before you export it.
Yeah.
Especially if you know your end user is working on weak hardware.
It forces a discipline in data engineering that we've honestly lost with the advent of infinite cloud compute. You really have to ask yourself, does the VP of sales actually need 20 million rows of individual transaction data to see a quarterly trend line?
Probably not.
Right, probably not. An aggregated view serves the exact same analytical purpose while fitting comfortably within the WASM memory footprint.
So, okay, we established this incredibly secure local processing environment via WebAssembly. But if the browser is doing all the heavy computational lifting, how is the state of the dashboard actually traveling through the email?
The packaging.
Right. The data, the charts, the layouts, they all have to be bound together somehow. What is fundamentally inside a datok.report file?
Unpacking that container is a masterclass in portable architecture. The file itself is essentially a single, highly structured JSON container. It's a plain text payload that holds every single piece of your analysis ready for encrypted transport.
But wait, JSON is a text-based format, and SQLite database is a binary file. You can't just shove raw binary data into a JSON structure without completely corrupting it. How does the database actually survive the trip?
That's where the serialization layer comes in. Datok takes the raw underlying some wide database file that you built, compresses it to minimize the payload size, and then applies base64 encoding.
Which solves the serialization problem perfectly. Base64 encoding translates the binary data of the database into a safe web standard text string.
Exactly.
It ensures that aggressive corporate email gateways or firewalls don't mangle the file in transit because it just looks like a long string of regular text characters.
Precisely. The source data is the heaviest part of the manifest, but it's just the foundation. Next, the JSON container holds the worksheets.
The pivot tables and charts.
Right, and this isn't a static image. It stores the actual configuration rules of your pivot tables. It remembers the specific dimensions you drag to the rows, the measures in your columns, your active aggregations like sum or average, your sorting logic.
And the geometry, right?
Yes, the specific geometric chart types you selected, whether that's a choropleth map, a scatter plot, or a packed bubble chart.
And storing those configurations as text strings is incredibly lightweight. But it also has to remember how those charts are spatially arranged for the stakeholder, right?
Yes, and that is handled by the dashboards component of the file. The JSON stores your specific 12-column flexible grid layouts. It dictates whether a card is set to 1/4 width, 1/3 width, half width, or if it spans the full 12 columns of the canvas.
It basically reconstructs the UI.
Exactly. It saves the card alignments, the titles, and the sizes as simple structural data so the viewer can reconstruct it flawlessly on the other end.
So we have the compressed data payload, the chart logic, and the spatial layout. What dictates the interactivity state? Like, if I send a dashboard that's already filtered to just the European market, how does it remember that?
That state is preserved by the filters array within the container. It captures both active global filters, which are the overarching dimensions used to slice entire dashboards at once, and sheet-level filters, which are the highly specific subsets configured on individual worksheets.
And there's one final piece inside this JSON box, which honestly might be the most crucial element for me as an architect who is constantly fending off emails about data literacy.
Yeah, the metadata legend.
Yes, the legend.
This is where Datok really differentiates itself from just a simple visualization tool. The container compiles your entire business dictionary, everything you built in the legend module. It packs up all your column aliases, detailed descriptions, assigned data stewards, domain tags, and expert contacts, and bundles them right into the file.
It's a completely self-contained analytical ecosystem. It's not a flat PDF where the data is dead and unqueryable.
Right.
And it isn't a brittle hyperlink
Right.
to a web server that might go down for maintenance or require a VPN connection or force a password reset. You are literally packaging an entire interactive application, a relational database, and a metadata catalog into a single portable file.
It completely democratizes the distribution side of analytics. Let's look at the actual workflow of how this moves from creator to consumer because the architectural choices directly inform the user experience.
Yeah, let's walk through it. As the data engineer, your workflow is incredibly streamlined. You're in the Datok Applications Analyze tab. You've mapped your data, built your visualizations, and arranged your 12-column grid.
And you've done your homework in the Legend tab.
Crucially, yes, you've spent time in the Legend tab ensuring your column annotations and metadata are fully populated. Because providing context is half the battle in data engineering.
It really is. So once your workspace is finalized, triggering the export is just a single action in the left-hand sidebar. Under the Analysis Settings panel, you just click the brightly colored orange button, Export Report.
And what's happening behind the scenes there is fascinating. You aren't sending a request to a server to generate a report.
Nope.
The browser itself acts as the compiler. It instantly bundles the base64 database, the layout grids, the filter states, and the legend catalog into that JSON payload, and triggers a local file download directly to your machine.
You've just minted your portable database.
Yeah. Now, you send that file to your stakeholder. You could drop it in Slack, send it via secure enterprise file transfer, or just email it, and along with the file, you give them the public URL, datok.eu/viewer.html.
And when the stakeholder navigates to that viewer page, they experience something incredibly rare in enterprise software, which is zero friction.
It's beautiful.
There is no login screen, there is no user authentication, there's no oath flow to navigate. The interface is a pure client-side ingestion zone. The stakeholder literally just drags and drops the report file onto the landing page drop zone, or they click to browse their local file system.
They drop the file in, but okay, my architect brain is immediately flashing warning signs again here.
Here we go.
Usually ingesting and parsing a multi-megabyte JSON payload and mounting a local database freezes the entire user interface of a web app. The browser tab locks up, the mouse won't click, and the user thinks the application is totally broken. How does the viewer handle that without crashing the experience?
By utilizing web workers for off-thread processing, the WASM engine doesn't run on the main UI thread.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, so when the file is dropped, the viewer spawns a background worker. This background thread parses the JSON, decompresses the base64 payload, and mounts the squirrel's database in memory, completely independent of the main user interface.
So the UI stays snappy and responsive while the heavy lifting happens in the background. And once that database is mounted, the 12-column grid renders exactly as the creator designed it. But what happens next? If it's just rendering a view, we could have used a static image. What is the actual interactive experience for the stakeholder?
It functions as a hyper-responsive, fully interactive sandbox. If the creator configured global dashboard filters, those appear natively as drop-down menus in the left navigation sidebar of the viewer.
Right.
When the stakeholder selects a new region or time frame from that dropdown, the viewer doesn't just filter visual elements on the screen. It constructs a new SQL query, passes it to the off-thread WASM worker, recalculates the aggregations directly against the in-memory database, and redraws all the Canvas widgets dynamically.
And because it's happening locally in RAM, that round-trip query time is often measured in milliseconds. There's zero network latency.
None.
What if they want to isolate their analysis and drill down into just one specific visual rather than filtering the entire dashboard?
The viewer handles that through worksheet filters. If individual charts had specific filters applied during the creation phase, those selectors appear right at the top of the canvas under an interactive sheet filters panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, stakeholders can manipulate these controls to narrow down table rows or chart categories for that specific visual element without polluting the global state of the dashboard.
I want to highlight something crucial for organizational trust here, which is graph and data parity. When your stakeholder is clicking around, slicing the data, the colors of the bars, the ordering of the categories, the sorting states, and the underlying SQL tables render absolutely identical to what you saw in your main ETL tool.
Which is so important.
They are seeing the exact mathematical truth you intended them to see. There is no translation error where a complex pivot table suddenly loses its formatting because the viewer software's rendering engine got confused by the file format.
That visual and mathematical consistency is vital. I mean, if a stakeholder spots a formatting error, they immediately distrust the underlying data.
Yep.
Every time. But for me, the most significant breakthrough of this entire viewer experience is how it tackles the context problem. We touched on the metadata legend earlier. Datok addresses a massive invisible cost in analytics. Stakeholders looking at a beautifully rendered chart and having absolutely no idea what the underlying data represents.
Oh, the endless barrage of Slack messages and emails. Hey, what does cust_id_fin actually mean? Or who is the owner of this metric? Or is this revenue figure calculated before or after taxes? You spend half your week just defining your terms to different departments.
In the Datok viewer, stakeholders can access a fully searchable data catalog right at the bottom of the navigation sidebar. It renders the entire data dictionary you built in a clean, easily navigable grid. But the genius of the UI is that they don't even have to leave the dashboard canvas to get those answers.
With the floating tooltips.
Yes. This is where the floating legend tooltips bridge the gap between visualization and documentation.
This is arguably the best UI feature of the whole platform. Walk us through how this actually looks for the end user.
So if you, the data engineer, provided metadata for a specific column, the stakeholder will see a subtle dotted orange underline beneath that column header any way it appears on the dashboard.
Like on a bar chart axis.
Exactly, whether it's the axis of a bar chart or the header of a pivot grid. When they hover their mouse cursor over that dotted orange underline, a floating tooltip card immediately pops up.
Bringing the documentation directly into the analytical pane. That is so clean. What exactly lives on that tooltip card?
Everything they need to trust the data. It displays the business nice name, instantly translating a cryptic database field like cust_id_fine into customer financial identifier.
Thank goodness.
Right. It shows the detailed, plain language definition you wrote. It explicitly lists the data steward responsible for the data's quality, the specific expert they should contact with deep technical questions, and the domain tag, categorizing it under finance, logistics, or marketing.
It integrates the what with the why. You're handing them the raw data, the visual analysis, and the comprehensive business documentation in one unified, localized environment.
And if a stakeholder gets confused by the mechanics of the viewer itself, there's an integrated help guide available directly on the sidebar. The Viewer Guide and Info tab walks new users through keyboard shortcuts and explicitly explains the security sandboxing details, reassuring them that their data isn't being beamed up to some server.
When we step back and evaluate the architectural choices here, we really have to recognize the massive leap forward this represents for data democratization.
It's a paradigm shift.
Truly. You are providing your stakeholders with a zero-cost, hyper-secure, interactive sandbox. You are entirely bypassing the administrative nightmare of IT procurement for software licenses. You are keeping sensitive information off third-party multi-tenant servers, ensuring rigorous privacy compliance, and you are delivering a premium, fully documented analytical experience through a mechanism as simple as dropping a file into a browser.
It requires a total rethinking of how intelligence moves through an organization. We started this deep dive talking about the dark ages of crashing email attachments and impenetrable server lockouts. Datok's Wesum-powered approach is like finally getting that flat-pack kitchen delivered, assembled, and cooking perfectly in seconds without ever calling a contractor.
It raises a really important, almost philosophical question for you to mull over as we wrap up this
Oh, I
analysis.
like this one.
For decades, the ability to interact with complex data was gatekept by enterprise budgets, IT security clearances, and server infrastructure. If the barrier to entry for highly secure, interactive, compliant data analysis is now literally just having a standard web browser
Right.
and dragging a file onto a screen, how does that dramatically shift the power dynamic of who actually gets to make data-driven decisions in your organization?
When you remove the friction of access, you empower the entire team, not just the people with the budget for a viewer license.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to explore these concepts, grab a .report file, and experience the WebAssembly performance for yourself. Until next time, keep your data secure and your dashboards interactive.